Support for the Bittersweet Life comes from My Expat Taxes, the most trusted expat tax service for U.S. citizens abroad. For more information, visit myexpattaxes.com. Even better, use the code BSL for 10% off any plan, excluding the base light plan. That's myexpattaxes.com and use the code BSL for 10% off. Why make filing your taxes harder than it needs to be? Visit myexpattaxes.com to find help and file soon for an early refund.
Welcome to Rome. This is The Bittersweet Life with Katy Sewell and Tiffany Parks. Hello, this is The Bittersweet Life. I'm Katy Sewell.
I'm Tiffany Parks.
Tiffany in Rome, Katy in Seattle. And remember, if you don't want to hear this show with advertising, you can always join us over at patreon.com/The Bittersweet Life Podcast, where for just $3 a month, you can have all the ad-free listening you could possibly want. You'll find a link in the show notes. All right, so today we are going to tackle something that nobody ever really wants to tackle, which is their yearly taxes. Now, here in the U.S., tax day is right around the corner. I believe, for those of you living abroad, like Tiffany here, you can get an extension if you're a U.S. citizen to what? June 15th, I believe.
It is June 15th. Yeah, we get 2 months of automatic, what's the word?
Extension?
Extension. There you go.
Yes.
An automatic extension. You do not have to file for it. You just get it, which is great. However, there is a caveat. If you owe money, and I almost always owe money because I'm self-employed now, you do not get an extension on any money that you owe. So you will be charged, and it's happened to me twice now. So this year I'm not going to do it. This year I'm going to file in time, but you will get a bill for interest if you do not pay by April 15th. So it's a little bit misleading, the extension thing.
Okay. So wait, when does the bill come? When does your interest start accruing? On April 15th?
I think it starts accruing on April 15th. Yeah. So I always pay my taxes on time. Let me rephrase that. I always file my taxes on time for me, which is by June 15th.
Yes.
But I have for the past 2 years gotten a bill for some interest. It's not a terrible amount because it's only 2 months of interest, but still, it's like, oh, I don't want to have to pay.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm already paying taxes. Now I have to pay something else. So if you are an expat listening to this and you hear, oh, wow, I get 2 extra months. If you have a job where you have withholdings, then you're fine. But if you owe at the end of the year or you haven't paid your quarterly taxes, then yes, you're going to need to make sure you file by the actual date of April 15th.
Wow. Okay. Well, how do you feel? Because I know not all countries, the U.S. is kind of special in that you get to pay taxes in the U.S. Like if you had moved to Italy from, I don't know, almost anywhere else in the world, you would not have to pay taxes to your home country if you were an Italian resident. Is that correct? Or citizen, at least.
The U.S. is one of only 2 countries in the whole world, and I'm not sure what the second country is, but it's only one of 2 countries in which you have to file taxes regardless of your residence. So almost every other country in the world is residence-based taxes. If you're a resident there, you pay taxes. If you're living abroad, you do not have to pay taxes there. The U.S. is an exception. However, you have to file your taxes. You don't necessarily have to pay.
Right.
You have to pay if you're making a lot of money.
Right. I did reach out to a couple of our listeners to weigh in on this conversation as well. Before I go way deep into your tax past, Tiffany,
let's not go there.
let's take a listen to one of our pieces of tape today from Sarah and Ben, currently living in Madrid.
Hi, this is Sarah Gladding in Madrid, Spain, and I'm here with my husband, Ben Gladding. Katy asked me if I had any thoughts on filing taxes from abroad, and I am a little embarrassed to admit that I'm not the person in our household who does that. But I'm very grateful that my husband, Ben, who's here with me, is the one who tackles that task. So he's here to talk a little bit about his thoughts on filing taxes from abroad.
Hi. Yeah, it's interesting. Sarah and I were talking about this earlier when she got the email and got your message. But we were talking a lot about, especially working as teachers, when you live abroad and you're American, you typically have to file local taxes, but also taxes back in the US. So there's this thing called the foreign earned income exclusion, which says that you're excluded for a certain amount of income that you earn abroad, roughly equivalent to, I can't even remember what it is for this year. It's something like $108,000.
130,000? Is that what we?
No. Well,
okay.
I think
Okay.
it's some amount, and we were just saying like, well, as teachers, well, we're never going to have to worry about hitting that threshold, even for one of us or even both of us. I think combined it's something like $250,000. So it's often, especially for the US side of things, just like checking a box. And our first year when we lived in Morocco, we actually had a sort of an international tax accountant come to our school and just kind of, give a little brief presentation about the kind of the different services he offered. And, one of them was, filing U.S. taxes for U.S. expats that lived abroad. We signed up with him. I met with him. I had a couple of conversations with him online as well as through email. And everything just worked beautifully, right? He pretty much just handled everything. So while Sarah says I handle the taxes, quote unquote, I compile the documents and then send all of our information off to him and then just wait. And then he sends it back to me and says, okay, you're good to go. Here's the final return, sign off on it and you'll be good to go.
And we have the automatic extension, right? Living abroad.
Yes. I mean, that's for everyone, right? It's through, instead of, April 15th as tax day, it's June 15th. So that kind of like puts a little less pressure on it in terms of getting it done. It's always one of those things where it's just like, oh, we have to do this again. And you kind of just have to get all of those documents. And thankfully, just working at a school and not owning a home in the US or really anything in the US, it's pretty straightforward. We just kind of get some statements from our employer of saying like, oh, you earned this amount of money this year, and then just kind of, sending that off. So I feel for some of our colleagues who have assets in the US that have to figure out, well, I own a home in the US, but I live here, and it's much more complicated. But ours is very simple and straightforward.
Yeah, so thank you for reaching out to us, and I hope that that's maybe helpful for other international teachers out there.
Yeah, so they are both international teachers. We did a whole episode with Sarah where you can learn a lot about teaching internationally if that's something you're interested in. Go and look for her name, Sarah Gladding, as a guest. But yeah, so they touch on a number of different things there. One, that exclusion that you were talking about, where if you don't make over a certain threshold, you don't have to pay the U.S. any money.
Wait a second. It's more complicated than that. If you make over, and I believe that she was right, it's closer to 130,000 right now, not 108. I'm not sure the exact number, but it's around there. You don't have to pay taxes on that first 130,000 if you're paying taxes somewhere else, like in the place where you live.
I see. So if you're paying taxes to Italy, then you don't have to pay it.
You have to show that you're paying taxes to Italy. They want to know that you're paying taxes in Italy, and then they don't make you pay taxes in the United States up to 130,000 or somewhere around that. But if you are living in a country like Monaco that does not have income tax, and I mean, I don't know if Monaco still doesn't have income tax, but they didn't, many, many years ago, or the Vatican. The Vatican does not. There's no income tax in the Vatican. So if you're living in a country in which you do not have to pay income tax, then you have to pay that tax to the United States, even if it's under that threshold.
Interesting. Yeah.
Yeah. But if you do pay tax to another country, then it's only what you make above that threshold. It like starts there. And then you just pay tax on what's over that.
I mean, one thing they did talk about also is the value of compiling your documents and then sending them to somebody else to handle all the complexity. Having your own tax advisor, a person who knows like, okay, you're not paying in Monaco, so you're going to have to pay XYZ, rather than you knowing that for sure. The value of hiring a professional I totally understand that. That is something that as we get older and Derek and I's taxes just here stateside get more complicated, we talk about it every year. Maybe we should start to hire somebody to help us out with this. And every year we're like, well, maybe we can muddle through it one more time. And really, I just know one of these days we're going to hire a professional and we're going to be like, why did we not do that so much sooner?
Not only that, Katie, I think that in some cases, I don't know if it would be in your case, but I think in some cases, if you were to hire a professional, you might save money in your taxes, like more money than it cost you to hire that professional. So it's not even just like about saving you the headache of doing your taxes, but it's like, oh my gosh, there's a whole, exclusion or write-off that I didn't know about that I can take, and I wouldn't have known if it hadn't been for this tax preparer, and I just saved X amount of money. And
I
see, that's what
know.
I'm always like. That's my temptation. But then I look at my salary and I'm like, probably not.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing too, is I think what we always run up against, and if any of you listening have a solution to this, let me know. What we always run up against is like, how do we find this person? Because there are a lot of tax preparers, but it's not like they're all created equal. So, how do you find the person that's right for like the level that you're at? There are certain people who specialize in certain things, and so,
Yeah, all those write-offs for private jets.
I mean, yeah, we
You
don't
have a
have any
private jet,
private
Katie?
jets.
If
Not
you had a
yet.
private jet, you could write off like $10 million. Apparently, so I've heard.
Or if we put like solar panels on the house, or I don't know. Well, another thing that Ben and Sarah touched on was the automatic extension that we already mentioned, but they did say that in a way they feel like they're a little bit lucky because they are both salaried employees living in Madrid and they don't have any assets in the United States. So as a result, their taxes are a lot easier. I can totally see how it would get super complicated if you had a home back in the States, or you had kids living abroad back home, in the States going to school. What a mess.
It would be, yeah.
I hate to even think about it. Another argument, I guess, for hiring the tax professional to help you out. Well, Tiffany, let's go back a little bit to when you were considering or even just beginning to live abroad. I was, reading a bit about being an expat and taxes, and one person pointed out in their video or article, I can't remember which, basically just saying, one thing people don't consider when they're like planning the dream and selling all their stuff and like moving abroad, they don't consider something like taxes. That's
Yeah.
like at the bottom of the list of the things that you're considering. What will this do to my taxes? Did you give it any thought whatsoever?
Oh gosh, no, it didn't cross my mind.
Yeah, and
Never crossed my mind.
And so when you're kind of free floating at the very beginning, you're trying to make it in Rome, but you don't really have a plan. You're kind of going from month to month, year to year, trying to figure out like, how am I going to make Italy work for me so that I can stay here forever? And you're also a young person. How seriously do you take your taxes sometimes when you're a young person? Not very. What was your approach, or did you even have an approach at that point?
The first few years, no approach. I don't think I filed. Mm-hmm. I didn't have any like official employment for the first couple of years. I was like, yoga teaching, getting like $30 here, $30 there. Then, started working in the tourism industry. It was all very ad hoc and there was no paper trail.
Yeah, that's
So-
true. It's all just people handing you cash or something like that, right?
Yeah. Eventually, when I legalized my status in Italy and became a legal resident and tax-paying resident in Italy, then I started filing in the US. It was a couple years in. It wasn't that long in. It was maybe 3 years in, something like that. And I started filing in the States. And I knew that I think it was like if you file for 5 years and you don't get audited, I think then, I mean, maybe I'm just making this up to make myself be able to sleep better at night. But I feel like once you've regularized your status as a taxpayer in the States, everything else is under the bridge, right? Like after a few good years of paying, I feel like.
Yeah, they're not going to come back to you now and be like, what were you doing here in 2003? Like, what was happening in
Well, I
this?
wasn't living in Rome in 2003, but yeah, okay, 2004.
What were you doing in 2004 and 5 here? Like, how did yeah, that's true. They're probably not going to dig back in the past that much, nor would you probably even know what you had made at that point, right?
Yeah. And you know what? My mother, bless her heart, she wrote me a letter. I mean, it was like a to whom it may concern letter, basically saying that she was supporting me financially, which she wasn't, but she said she was, so that, if anyone was like, well, how do you live?
Yeah.
So my mom's supporting me. Here's the proof.
Here's the letter I
So
keep in my purse. Yeah. That's very sweet. That's very sweet. So when you were not yet what's the difference? Like you had your permiso
I
to
was
be there versus, but you're not like a citizen yet, right? So you have like
okay. A legal, let's say a legal immigrant, a legal resident, but not a citizen.
yeah. Was there any difference from what taxes you had to pay to Italy between those two things, or were they exactly the same?
It's exactly the same. However, once I became a citizen, my bank contacted me. And at first I thought it was just some like survey. You know how your bank will send out like a survey and you just ignore it. You're like, I'm not filling out some dumb survey. And they kept sending me this thing. And like there was like a scadenza, like a due date. And I finally was like, my gosh, why to Claudio, why does my bank keep sending me this thing? He's like, let me look at that. And he was like, this is serious. We gotta go to the bank. We gotta make an appointment and go in. And I was like, why? He's like, because you have to give them your American bank details. So apparently, when you are an Italian citizen, if you have a bank account in a foreign country, even if it's your home country, because now you're a citizen, so any other country is a foreign country, you have to declare it to the Italian government. You do not have to pay taxes on it, at least not up to a certain amount. But if you have a bank account, they need to know. And it goes both ways. America wants to know if you've got a foreign bank account as well. So yeah, so I had to come in and I had to fill out a whole bunch of paperwork, and it was really unpleasant because you never want to think like, I don't know, I think when you're an expat you kind of have this idea, it's false idea that you've got these like two separate parallel lives, right? And never the twain shall meet.
Except through the bank. Yeah. Right.
And so you think, okay, I've got my US bank over there and I've got my Italian bank, and they have no idea what's going on. They don't even know each other. Well, now they know, apparently. They know.
Yeah. And I guess that's because what we would assume Italy wants to know if you're like storing a bunch of the money you made in Italy somewhere else. Is that it?
Yes. And I think also if I were to like apply for public assistance, they would want to know. Like if I've got millions in the United States and here I am like getting a welfare check from Italy, that wouldn't be right.
Right. Fair enough. Fair enough. All right. Well, let's pause for a moment and take a quick break. All right, I want to play another piece of tape from Drek in Florence. So let's listen to that.
Hi, Katy. It's Drek Baker from here in Florence. You asked about my experience filing taxes abroad. I wish that I could help. The truth is, my granddaughter and I have been here in Florence for over 2 years, and I still don't have my permesso di soggiorno. Our visas expired over a year ago, and despite having applied for my permesso last summer, I still have no resolution. Here in Italy, you have to have a visa to move into the country. Then you have to get your permesso, or permit to stay beyond a year, and only then can you become an actual legal resident. And I think, at least I hope, you don't have to file taxes here until you're an actual resident here. And we just live here.
So, Tiffany, he's not filing any Italian taxes because he does not yet have his permesso. Are you surprised?
I feel very, very bad for him that he doesn't have his permesso yet. I think that that's ridiculous. If he's gone about everything in the correct way, which it sounds like he has, getting a visa to move to Italy is no easy feat. So just the fact that he was able to get that, that's impressive. That's a huge step. So it feels like once you've got that and you get to the country legally, like the rest is sort of just red tape. But of course, it's red tape that can take a long, long time. I remember having friends when I first moved to Rome who were students. And several of them they were doing an entire year abroad, not just a semester abroad. They were going to like do their whole 1 year abroad. And when you go over with a university, they're very strict about the paperwork, and they make sure you file all of the paperwork, and you got to file within like 8 days of getting there for your permesso di soggiorno for a student, right? Because you're there under a student visa. And so many of these people told me that they finally got it like a week before they went home or something like that.
Yep.
So it's not unusual. As far as the tax situation, I wouldn't know what you were supposed to do in that situation. I do know that a lot of people in the United States who are immigrants who are not yet documented, who are like in the process of they file their taxes. Now, how that they're able to do that, I don't know. I don't know how it works. It sounds a little murky to me. But I assume that if you can do it over there, you can do it over here. Every person in Italy has a tax number. It's called a codice fiscale, a fiscal number, technically, fiscal code. It's very, very easy to get. You do not have to be a legal citizen to get it. It's based on your birth date, your name, where you were born, just very verifiable information. It's hard to describe, but like it's a code that exists. You just have to claim it. Okay, so you would have one. Not that you have one because you're not a resident in Italy, but I could put in your name, your birth date, and your place of birth. There's a certain website that will do it. It will produce the code that you would get if you ever asked for one.
Oh, okay.
So I remember getting that very, very soon in the first weeks that I was in Rome. So it was very easy to get that tax number. Now, what do you do with that? You have to have it for a lot of different reasons. You have to have that number to get healthcare. But of course, you can't get healthcare unless you have a permesso di soggiorno. So I don't know what Drek is doing for healthcare. Maybe he has private insurance, or maybe he just pays cash for healthcare, which you can do in Italy because it's not terribly, terribly expensive. But I know I had that code, and you need it to do other things like if I wanted to go and pay my landlord my rent back when I was first in Rome, and I didn't have my documentation yet. I was renting an apartment, and I paid my landlord with a bank transfer. But since I didn't have a bank account, I just would go into their bank, and I would give them, the code of that account, and I would just give cash, and they would make the transfer. I had to give that code. I had to give my tax code in order to do that. So you can get that code without being a legal resident.
But would there be any benefit for him at this point in this kind of limbo state to pay Italian taxes?
I mean, I don't know. I really don't know. I don't know
Yeah.
what his situation is like, really. Like, is he kind of in a situation where it's already risky enough for him to be there without having his permesso that, additionally adding the non-paying of taxes makes it no better, no worse? I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Tricky stuff. So you've moved abroad. You came abroad with no plan and certainly no tax plan. Now you've been there for 20 plus years. You're married. You're now property owners. Like you own your own condo. Would you say it's gotten easier, more routine? What's your perspective now as like, let's just call you an adult versus like what you were when you first arrived?
I'm finally an adult. Finally happened. For me, paying my Italian taxes is easy. I mean, I don't do it myself. I do my American taxes myself, which I probably shouldn't. I really probably shouldn't. I'm just like you. Like I don't really know why I do it. I'm a masochist or something. There's part of me that's like I'm really proud of myself that I am able to do it.
Yeah.
Because I taught myself how to do it. Nobody showed me how to do it. I just basically Googled everything. I looked up all of the forms. I read the instructions. Not all of them, but what I could. Every year it's a nightmare because every year I forget, what I learned the year before. And
For sure.
Now that we don't have to print it out anymore, right? I just file it online, so I don't have the printout. I'm like, shoot, why didn't I print it out last year at the end of the
Then I could just look up what I did. Yeah.
I could just look what I wrote.
I know.
Because there's like a child tax credit that every single year I try to claim, and every single year after going through all of like the whole worksheet to figure out if I'm eligible, I get to the very end and it's like, yes, my child is the right age. Yes, he lives with me. Yes, that. Yes, everything's yes, 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 yes. I get to the end. Are you a resident of the United States? I'm like, oh, no. And like, you cannot claim this credit. I'm like, no. Happens to me every single year. But back to the Italian taxes, I go to a tax preparer because in Italy, they have this sort of like non-profit company that they will do your taxes for like some ungodly low amount of money if you make under a certain amount. And so I've always worked part-time in Italy and at a very, frankly, low salary. And then I've done freelance on top of that. And so
Yep.
I've been able to take advantage of that. I also, my husband and I do not file together. And the reason for that is he's a Vatican employee, so he does not have to pay income tax.
Ah.
So we file separately.
And you can't get in under his no income tax thing as a spouse? No?
Well, no, because I'm not employed by the Vatican.
Oh, I know. But, I don't know.
I
Maybe
mean-
there's some loophole. Oh, I see. I see. I mean, for me, I think this every year as things get more complicated because of this freelance lifestyle, things like us leading a trip to Rome, which, is havoc on the taxes. I mean, every time I add some sort of new freelance thing, I think, I kind of miss the days when I was in my 20s. I didn't make hardly any money at all, but I had one or two W-2s. And I don't know if you ever used this system, Tiffany, but they used to have this call-in phone system where you would just call a phone number and it would be like, do you have a W-2? And you push one for yes. And then it'd be like, enter this line, enter that line. And then it would be like, do you have another W-2? Push one for yes. Enter this line, enter that line. And then it would just be like, boop, boop, boop. Okay, your refund is XYZ amount. Thank you. And then it would hang up. And I'm just like, the ease of that, where, you could just do your taxes in 10 minutes or less. I definitely miss those days, even if they were not as comfortable. Even if I was living in a house that was full of rats or whatever, I still do miss the ease of that. And of course,
I think, Katie, I think this is the year. I think you need to get a tax preparer this year.
I have next to no time to do that now that we're
Is it too late? Is it too late? I don't
I
know.
don't know if it's too late. Is it too late when you get to April 6th? I'm sure some of you listening know. Maybe it's too late. I don't know. We're getting awfully close
Katie.
here.
I mean, I think it would be worth it for you, considering you sold a book this year. So
It's all very mishmash. All of
You've
my
got
income is very mishmash.
it's confusing. I mean, you've got like 6 or 7 income sources, Katie. Like it's very complex. Plus you're married, so that makes it even more complex. And then you own a home together. There's more complexity. You have a lot of things that you have to write off as far as expenses for the Rome trip. I don't know. I think it would be worth it for you. It's probably worth it for me too. I just am so stubborn.
Yeah, why bother?
One thing that's funny about paying taxes in Italy, you can write off so much, Katie. Like, I don't know, because I know that in the States you've got your what is it? Your standard deduction.
Yeah,
So most of us, we take the standard deduction, right?
right. Because
Because-
you'd add up everything and you'd be like, well, I didn't quite hit I didn't quite
Yeah.
kick it over the side of the
Yeah.
standard
So
deduction.
so to be honest, I do not know if Italy has a standard deduction, but I know that maybe they don't, and maybe that's why they ask you for all your receipts, because I save the receipt for every single time I go to the pharmacy. Because you can write it all off. Not if you're buying like face cream. You can't write off that. But like if it's medicine of any kind, even if it's over-the-counter medicine, or any medical device like a thermometer or like a nebulizer thingy, you can write that all off. Any kind of medical visit for you or your child, all of your child's sports and music lessons, and any kind of lesson that your kid does, you can write all of that off. I'm not sure if you can write off private school. Maybe. Then you can write off if you do certain type of home improvements. You can write that off. When we first bought this place, we got the big blinds, the outdoor blinds that hang over our balcony, because very, very sunny in Italy. So if you have a big balcony and you don't have these blinds, like you basically can't be on your balcony in the summer because it's just too hot.
Yep.
So we bought these blinds, and it was a certain tax process, a lot of forms we had to fill out, but like we got almost everything we spent on them back in taxes. Like
Wow.
they cost like I don't know, like 3,000 euros or something like that, and we got like 2,500 back.
Wow.
Yeah, I know.
Can you do things like you and I both do much of our work from home? Can you write off like part of your home? Because we can do that in
No,
the States. Like a certain
that you can't.
percentage of the house.
Yes.
If you work from home, you can write off a percentage of the house.
Well, I think that's a gray area. I don't know. I know that if you have a business, like a true business, not just like I'm a freelancer, but like I have a business and it has a business name. If you have that, you have to have a separate office. It can't be part of your home, and which is I think is stupidest rule. I think that Italy has a lot of really dumb rules like that that
Mm.
really hinder people from starting their own businesses, which is, it's only a detriment to their economy. So I don't know why they do it. But that's one of them. You wanted to start like an actual tour agency, not just like
Hmm.
like a personal individual tour guide, but you want to have your own agency. You can't run it out of your home. You have to have a
Hmm.
separate office.
Interesting. I wonder if there are people listening right now that are tax preparers or accountants, one in Italy, one in the US, and they're both like, these people don't know
For
what they're talking
sure.
about.
I am they're biting their knuckles right now,
They're like,
because they're so frustrated
yeah,
with
they're
us.
screaming, hire somebody. You can't do that. You can't do that. I mean, I'm lucky because Derek is actually quite good with numbers and such, and so he leads the way taxes wise around this house. And every year we have a similar conversation where he'll, ask me at the beginning of the year to track certain things better, and I'll set out being like, okay, yeah, I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna track my stuff better, and then somewhere around April, the wheels go flying off the cart, and I forget what he's told me to track, and then we have to go through the painstaking process of trying to recreate everything that I've done from a business capacity from then on. So it is a true nightmare. I am.
Yeah.
I have an artistic brain, to be sure. That's also another reason to hire somebody.
For sure.
All right. Well, why don't we leave it there? Everybody who has done their taxes already, congratulations to you. And for those of you who haven't, join me in figuring out how to get it done, whether that be by hiring a professional or by white knuckling it up to the deadline. I wish all of us great luck. And until next time, this is The Bittersweet Life. I'm Katie Sewell.
I'm Tiffany Parks.
Join us again. Bye.
Thanks to My Expat Taxes for supporting this program. If you're a U.S. citizen living abroad, let My Expat Taxes help you easily file no matter how complex your tax situation is. Visit myexpattaxes.com to get started. And remember, be sure to use the code BSL to earn 10% off their services.